Hello everyone, sorry I'm not very well prepared. I'm still fixing my headphones. Hi everyone, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Nosheen, as many of you would know. I'm the founder and CEO at Moonlight Trust, and today we're doing a special fundraising appeal to support families in Afghanistan. And we would be joined by a very, very special guest, Gulwali. I'm just checking if he's with us or if he's joined us so I can send him a friend request. So, okay, he's still not here, so I'm just gonna see if I can send him. You're gonna have to bear with me. Well, we're hoping that he'll join us soon. What we're going to do today is, as you know, it's a month of Ramadan, and we are fundraising for food packs for refugees in various countries. One of the recent appeal that we did was for medical supplies for Ukrainian refugees, but today we are going to be fundraising towards families in Afghanistan. For those of you who have been following up on news, would know that there's confirmed reports coming out that mothers are giving birth to babies who die a few days after their birth because they've not had enough food. They're malnutritionized. So. That's what's going on. Some of the parents there's been reports that parents have been selling their kidneys. Previously, we did a small project in Afghanistan, and we want to give more support. And since it's the month of Ramadan, and many of you who are from Muslim community do believe that blessings would be multiplied if you donate during the month of Ramadan. So what we are saying is that if you donate £40, it feeds a family of 5 for a whole month. And for the first, for first 1,000, Moonlight Trust would also match fund the food packs. So for those of you who are joining us, thank you for bearing with us. I'm still waiting for our guests to join us. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nosheen, and I'm the founder and CEO of Moonlight Trust, a charity that I set up in memory of my brother Moon, on a very personal note, and it supports homeless and at home, and we also run a food bank, so we help some of the poorest communities at home in UK, but refugees in Greece, in France, in Serbia, in Ukraine, for last 10 or 8 years, and Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. So we've been supporting refugees in nearly 7 to 8 countries. And it's not been possible without your support. And that's why we're here today asking you to support the fundraising appeal for Afghanistan. And that is, for world's 7th poorest country. And even before this whole escalation started, so many of the people were living below poverty line. And according to World Food Bank program, they were 40% of the people were food insecure prior to what happened in Afghanistan. So now their situation has become twice as bad, and that's what we are saying, that if you donate today, we will match fund the food packs that donated through this special appeal whilst the Gulwali joins us. And if any of you have got any questions, okay, I'm getting questions. Walaikum salam. When you're able to work in Gaza, okay, we did some work in Palestine and Gaza. For last few years, we supported Ramadan food banks, and we also supported the food packs in West Bank. But unfortunately, right now, our projects in Palestine and Gaza have come to a halt because of the political situation and the situation that is going on there. We had to, put a pause onto that. Okay, I think Gulwali has joined us, and I need to accept him. Okay. Okay, I'm just waiting. I think Gulwali has come.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, Gulwali. How are you?
How are you? Nice to see you.
I'm okay. Nice to see you. Are you fasting?
Yeah, Alhamdulillah.
Are you fasting? Okay, I'm fasting as well. So I think it's good that we're talking about fundraising and food. So people need to know how it feels. When we are fasting, we know how it feels when we can't eat. So how have you been? How are you today?
Not too bad, a little tired, but yes, I'm good. And I think, there will be people, we are lucky we will break our fast in an hour or so, but there are people, Afghans and others who wouldn't have much to eat. So it's a very timely and important
True.
discussion.
True. Yes, thank you for joining us today. Like I said, today is a special, we help refugees in various different countries, but today is about Afghanistan and what's going on with, situation in Afghanistan. And I've already given a bit of brief in terms of, even prior to this escalation of 40% of the people were insecure in terms of food. And also now there's confirmed reports coming out that, there's children that who are dying because after birth, because the mothers have not had enough food. And some parents, there's confirmed reports, have been selling their kidneys and have been selling their children, which is something unimaginable or, for anyone around the world. So what we are saying today is that, anything that people donate through this session that we are doing, or through this appeal, we'll also upload the video on YouTube and later on Instagram. Moonlight Trust will match fund. So it's a special event. So anything that people donate for the first £1,000, we will actually match fund and we'll make it actually £2,000.
That's wonderful.
So thank you for joining us. Gulwali needs no introduction. For those of you who don't know Gulwali, he's the author. He's many things, but I'm just going to mention your book, The Lightless Sky. A book that has taken the world by storm. Bestseller on Amazon, and it's a story of a 12-year-old boy who had to leave and and flee war and persecution and had to go through so much misery and finally found refuge in UK, and that is Gulwali himself. And thank you for joining us. And for those of you who don't know about the book, we can post we can post a link when we post this video online. We'll post a link underneath. So today is about Afghanistan and the humanitarian crisis that is unfolding in Afghanistan. We understand that 9 or 8 billion, which was in Afghanistan's central bank reserves, has been frozen by international community in terms of negotiation tactics with Taliban or something. So we know that it's Afghanistan's in a situation that it's never been before, and people are suffering. But I know you've recently gone to Kabul and visited. So I just want you to tell us, because you've now seen firsthand as well. So you went after 12 years or so. So if you want to tell us a little bit about your trip, and also, what is the situation on ground?
Nushin, yes, thank you. Yes,
them.
sure. I went after 16 years, and it's heartbreaking what I saw. I was happy to see my family and siblings after so long, but the humanitarian situation, seeing children begging not for money, but actually begging for bread, and seeing women on the streets. Literally, the UN says 95%, 97% of the country lives below poverty, but I would say it's literally 100%, and about 28 million people, according to the UN, doesn't know where their next meal will come from. I feel like it's the whole country, and you mentioned children dying. So since the start of the year, about 15,000 children died when they were born because of due to malnutrition, and mothers are not being able to feed them. And just what I saw was absolutely unbelievable. And just last week there was a conference for Ukraine, and the international community raised £10 billion in humanitarian aid, which is really wonderful, and it's something to be appreciated. But sadly, there was a conference the week before on Afghanistan, similar conference, and pledging support in humanitarian assistance. Only $2.5 billion was raised. The UN was asking for $4.5 billion. So sadly, there is not the same solidarity with Afghans in Afghanistan, when in fact the international community, in particular the US, had betrayed and abandoned Afghanistan and Afghans. Right now, Afghans are going hungry. It's the worst crisis anywhere on earth, according to the UN. And everybody's struggling to provide for their families. And so it's good what you're doing. And thanks for your efforts in the team in Kabul, providing whatever, a few hundred families with basic supplies. I mean, people are struggling to provide flour, rice, oil, the basic essentials to survive on, because there is no work. A lot of Afghans are daily laborers. The people who even works in the civil service have not received their salaries. There's no physical currency because of the frozen assets, and also the lack of economic activities. There's been a huge decline in economic activities, but also the price of everything has gone up. There's a huge inflation, but then the Afghani money has lost its currency has lost its value as well. So there is so many issues that people are facing. But the main thing is, I mean, it's a short-term thing. We had to feed people. That's the most important thing. I mean, in winter, it was one of the harsh winter when I was there in early March. It was like -6, -7 some morning. The week before in February was -14. And a lot of Afghans don't have the luxury, of having gas or woods to burn. So I saw kids basically collecting plastics and whatever they could find to burn, which has its own health implications. So yeah, the country is in a huge, dire need of help, not only just the food and basic supplies, but also healthcare. We have about 2,500 hospitals, which used to be supported through the World Bank. They have stopped its funding. I mean, schools have not been able to receive funding as well. So this hospital doesn't have, not only the doctors are not being paid, but they don't have equipments. They don't have medicines to give to people. So, for example, out of 10 women who need cesarean to give birth, they can only do 2 to 3. And so the 7 of them, either the mother dies or the children die. So we have a huge number of people and children dying unnecessarily because the world just chose not to act, not to provide support. The Afghans should not be punished for politics and geopolitics and the failure of the U.S. and international community. So what I saw was, I wish I didn't go. I wish I didn't have. I mean, I saw these videos on social media. I saw the videos on YouTube, but actually being there on the ground and seeing kids coming up to you, uncle, buy me bread, which is just 10 Afghani, which is like 10 cents. And even those people who work, their wages is about £1 a day. What can you do with £1? For us, for example, people who works here, like a minimum wage is £10. £10 for Afghans is a week's salary if they're lucky to have a job. A day salary here in the UK is a month's salary for Afghans who are working. But most Afghans don't have jobs. There is no opportunities. There is no money. People, sadly, yeah. It's just I wish I hadn't seen or experienced what I saw.
No, I totally understand that how difficult it must be for you to watch that firsthand, and especially how people of Afghanistan right now feel betrayed, that how, international community, it was all in the news, and it was all, there's always, when the cameras are there, there's a buzz. It's a bit like when a body of Aylan Kurdi drowned, everybody was focusing on the refugees in Greece and then just forgot about them. And it's same happening in Afghanistan. It's actually twice as worse what's happening in Afghanistan. We can't imagine how parents would think of even selling their children. I just don't know. I can't comprehend. It doesn't even sink in. And this is what they've been reduced to. And, the human dignity, I want to remind people that, the word dignity and empathy, is missing what we see all these videos. They are these people are being violated of their basic human rights. And I know we can't change their situation, and we wish we had influence on politics or, all these other impacts. But all we can do right now is to support them and, donate today. And what we're saying is £40 for a family of 5 for a whole month. So that's what we are fundraising towards, and that's what we're encouraging people to do so. And I can't imagine that, how you have had to. Okay, I'm going to have to cancel a call. Sorry about this. So basically, so what you in terms of trauma, I always ask people this question because I don't know how, here that we have support in terms of trauma, in terms of, because, 40 decades of war and, violence and all that. And these people have carried, these children are also carrying that trauma, and now they're begging for bread. I just can't imagine how they cope with all this. How do you think, these people, their resilience, you want to say something about their resilience because they're just carrying on. They don't have a choice.
Sure. I wish, I don't want Afghans to be resilient because it's been forced upon them. Like, these people doesn't have to worry about food. Like, this is the basic essence of life, the most essential things. Afghanistan have the worst droughts in 30 years. And as I said, the harshest winter. And then all the funding, about 85% of Afghan services were funded for the last 20 years by the international community. That stopped overnight. The country just went completely into a decline. And that has impacted everybody's life. I saw people who are educated, who had master degrees, but had no jobs. How are they supposed to provide for their families? And also, there were farmers. Most Afghans are, as I said, daily laborers or farmers. The farmers usually keep seeds for harvest, to harvest wheats and other rice and things. They have eaten the harvest seeds as well, because then they're not even able to harvest. And also, there's been flooding. There's other natural disasters. So, in terms of the dignity, Afghans are very proud people. They would not beg for food. unless it's absolutely necessary and they had to survive. And you mentioned about selling daughters. It wasn't really selling. People were giving, I mean, it's heartbreaking. People were giving their daughters to other people because they were not able to feed them. And as I said, about 4,000 children dying because of lack of nutrition. Imagine every month since the start of the year, we don't know what happened from between August and December, but from January to now, every month, 4,000 children have been losing their lives due to lack of nutrition. And I just wonder, what is this kind of world that we live in where, and again, I'm quite disappointed with the Muslim Ummah, the so-called, there's so much talk about the Muslim, Ummah, the Muslim community. The Islamic countries in the Muslim world hasn't done much. I mean, I did a fundraising. Most of the contribution came through non-Muslims and my British friends, which I'm grateful for. So the Muslims world have abandoned Afghanistan and Afghans also. And I think it's quite unfortunate because there were 2 conferences of Islamic organizations, countries in Islamabad, and they pledged support, but no support arrived. And actually, it makes me sad to say that India was sending tons of wheats and Pakistan wouldn't even allow them to go through to the Afghans. So there's always politics involved in humanitarian efforts, which shouldn't be. And again, you can't run a country like Afghanistan of almost 40 million with aid, with charity. There has to be other solutions. There has to be development. There has to be infrastructure. But for the time being, we need to feed people. And this year, the UN says we need 4.5, 5 billion pounds to provide the basic services to families, to healthcare, education, sanitation, and so on, and food. I mean, the UN food program has the world's largest ever food program in Afghanistan to feed about 28 million people. And they have been struggling. And again, we can help people, let's say, for a month. And then what happens after a month? I mean, that's a good starting point. But then there has not been a sustainable plan or action. The government, I mean, the Taliban are in charge. They know how to beat people and how to do all sorts of bad stuff. But they have no idea how to govern. They don't know how to provide health services. And they don't have the money. And they don't have the necessary know-how. They don't have the resources and knowledge. All the Afghans who are running the country have left, so the brain drain of Afghanistan is no longer there. We need governance, we need a proper system, but right now I think what is needed is as a short-term measure, we need to raise money and we need to feed families. I traveled to Jalalabad, I traveled to a few districts. Everywhere you go, people need food. Even I ask people who are like, in government, people who are basically, usually they would help other people who are now in need themselves. So literally everybody, unless you have somebody in the West who can send you money, otherwise, you are struggling to survive. Almost everyone was struggling to provide for their loved ones and their families and their children.
And I understand your point about sustainability. And we, through Moonlight Trust, we moved away from giving food and basic aid, and we, so towards sewing machine classes, towards jobs, employability skills with the refugees in camps. But even if you listen to the head of the refugee UN agency, if even they say that there is never enough food and water and clothing to go around. So, if you've not had a meal inside your stomach, as we all go to work, if we don't get our lunch, we can't focus on work. So the bottom, we would like them to get into jobs. Ideally, we would like to, but it's such a disaster because half of the time, we are struggling to move from stage A to B. So stage A is to provide emergency supplies, and then stage B is to then help them, with some sort of infrastructure or jobs or some sort of, dignity, so they can, sustain for themselves. But what's in terms of refugee crisis worldwide, what I've seen is once you're in stage A, even in one of the biggest camps, which is in Atma camp on Turkey-Syria border, 200,000 refugees. We thought they will move somewhere, like nobody let them in. And Rohingya refugees, 1 million people in Bangladesh, in one of the world's poorest country, and same with 3 million Afghan refugees in Pakistan. We did some work with them in the poor neighborhoods of Islamabad, and we provided food, and some of them have, jobs and they sell things, but it's not close to nothing. They earn, like what you said, £1 a day. Okay, the refugees, the Afghans who have come, have got land or businesses there in Peshawar, they're established, but majority in the poor neighborhoods don't have anything. So, I think what people don't realize is
and that's the same case in Iran. I mean, in Iran, there's Afghans, they're not allowed to work. Afghans in neighboring countries have very few opportunities in terms of legal rights, right to work, right to education. I mean, things are terrible. And it's not since yesterday, it's since the last 20 or 30 years. And,
it's an ongoing.
Yeah, and we've seen images from Iran where Afghans have been harassed and beaten because just for seeking protection and leaving their country. About 1 million Afghan have left to Iran in the start of the year. So just 1 million Afghans have alone went to Iran. And Iran has been quite unwelcoming and cruel towards them. But also the European Union and the rest of the world needs to take some responsibility and welcome Afghans. But definitely right now, the focus rightly should be on providing basic necessity, basic supplies and parcels of food, which people need to survive on. And then we can think about all these other issues, because no matter how much we talk about sustainability, people are not able to feed their kids and people are not able to provide them warmth, then, all this talk is useless.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we always work on, like, even in Greece, we funded sewing machine classes, integration support, English language, so they could stand on their feet. But then the disaster kicks off. Like now, what's happening in Ukraine, like all the funding, will be prioritized somewhere else. And those refugees are, there with less. I don't know if you've seen the situation on Belarus and Polish border. There were Afghans and Syrians who froze to death,
nobody gives a damn about that. As I said, for Ukraine, they raised in one day £10 billion for humanitarian assistance. For Afghanistan, just a week earlier, they couldn't even raise 2.5 billion, which is basically, it's less than a day budget of the international community when there were a war in Afghanistan. The US and the international community spent 3 trillion. They were willing to spend money on war and killing innocent people, but here they're not willing to save lives. And so, yes, I mean, the solidarity and compassion towards Ukraine is very selective. And I wish, there's still people stranded in Calais, there are actually people still on the Belarus and Poland border. They have welcomed over 2 million Ukrainians, but they will not welcome any Afghans or Iraqis or Syrians. That just shows you the hypocrisy, double standards, and discrimination and racism in the refugee rights sector.
I think there's been many people have realized this, that now I think there's an opportunity for European to learn and grow, that we don't judge refugees for coming to this country, and they're coming here for better job. And I think there's been if we want to take one positive from the current situation in Ukraine, I think we've all learned that nobody leaves their home just because for £35 a week here or a house. Nobody wants to go, and no one's coming here to do those things, because as those are some of the myths that people attach to refugees. And I think there's been I know so many people who are now saying that we now understand more, and because it's close to home, and naturally they're realizing, what actually makes a refugee. Refugee is not who you are, it's what happened to you, and these people have been over a night now stripped of their identity, and they're being called
and I hope refugees. And I hope
Sorry. Okay, it's freezing. I don't know why. Can you hear us?
And I mean, the UK has allowed them to come here safely, which is very strange, because they were not allowed the same thing for other refugees. So the Afghans, the Iraqis, the Nigerian, Eritrean, South Sudanese, and others who are stranded in Calais and also in France. In this argument that if you're a genuine refugee, you should stay in the first safe country is nonsense, because that doesn't apply to the Syrians. And I mean, Hungary, Slovakia, Czech Republic, and Poland has been the most anti-refugee countries, specifically for Muslims and Middle Eastern refugees and North African refugees, but they're willing to take on Ukrainians because of political reason, because of what's happening in Ukraine, and rightly so. But I just feel like that compassion should not be selective, and I hope we can raise some money. I mean, if you raise like £1,000 tonight, and then you match it with £1,000, that's £2,000. You could support about 40, 45 families, or almost 50 families with that for a month. And that's something. And we can sit here and argue and fight over and more needs to be done. But if you can provide support and help to our 50 families during the month of Ramadan, where actually I've been speaking to family and relatives, they said this fasting, this month of Ramadan is not new for us. We've been fasting for the last 6 months. And we have been fasting because there's no food. And so I hope people give generously, and I hope people think about the importance of charity, and also supporting our fellow human beings, our fellow Muslims. And I have been really struggling to deal with and reflect on what I saw, what I have experienced in 2 weeks I was there. I was struggling to sleep, but when I come back, I even struggle to think about how the world is letting people go hungry. How are we allowing children to die because there is no nutrition, mothers to be unable to provide milk and food to their children? We live in a really strange and unequal and unjust world, and that should not be acceptable. Of course, we mentioned the Rohingyas, the Uyghurs, the situations of the people elsewhere in Greece, the Afghans stranded and other refugees in Bosnia and Serbia. Things are bad, but in Afghanistan, it's the worst anywhere on earth, and we ought to be giving what we could, and also pressuring our governments to do more, to give money. How could they manage to raise 10 billion in a day for Ukraine, but they're not able to raise 2 billion or 4 billion for Afghanistan, which is less than half of what they've raised for Ukraine. And the population is actually quite similar in terms of, and yeah, people need to be provided with these basic necessities so they could survive and overcome these challenges and adversities. In the short run, in the long term, we have to find some sort of more sustainable solution to their flights and their situation.
And also, we talk about, compassion and empathy. That's something that we as individuals can do. For those of you who are from Muslim community, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, you'll be questioned about how you spent your youth and your talent and your wealth. And this is where your brothers and sisters are in dire need. And it's a month of Ramadan, and they say, anything that you donate, your blessings are multiplied. Anything that you give, and just to I know you feel a bit disheartened that you didn't get enough support from the Muslim community, but I will tell you, when I did the first campaign for Afghanistan, majority of the donations actually did come from Muslim community, and mainly South Asian Muslim community. So they weren't from other parts of the world, and most of the people said that I only want to donate to Afghanistan. So just to give you some hope in that a lot of people who messaged me saying we wanted to donate to, even though they were from Pakistani background, they said, well, actually, I want my money to go into Afghanistan because what I'm seeing is actually unbearable. And everything that you just said, wow, we, embrace how you being from Afghanistan, being a refugee, and now seeing the situation.
Yes, that's great. That's great. I just feel like, we have a moral duty as well as Muslim, we have a religious obligation to help our fellow Muslims.
Yes, absolutely. And, this is why, especially in the month of Ramadan, we're doing this because, we're using our talent, our skills, our wealth, and whatever we can do to help fellow human beings. And I know everything that Gulwali has said about Ukrainian refugees, we are also helping Ukrainian refugees. So this is not about, we don't want to make it about one race or one religion or one culture. We want refugees to be identified for what's happened to them, not just beyond their race and religion and culture. And I think many people are now realizing. So I just want to remind everyone that this is a fundraising appeal, and you can donate to Moonlight Trust, moonlighttrust.org.uk/donate with the reference of Afghanistan, and everything that you donate today, we would actually match fund. I think we've lost Gulwali. I'm going to have to invite him again. I think we've just lost him. His internet's not working. So for those of you who have joined us, thank you so much for joining us. Please follow Moonlight Trust on Instagram for updates on these projects. We will be posting stories and, obviously links to how you can donate or you can support, and also a link to Gulwali's book as well, who's, committed to do today's session. So for those of you who are joining, we're doing a fundraising appeal, especially for Afghanistan. Anything that, the first food packs that you donate, we would actually match fund them. So anybody who wants to donate, it's £40 a food pack for a family of 5 for a whole month. So and we're talking about moving beyond giving them food and water, but the situation isn't improving. The situation is getting worse every time there is a war somewhere else. The situation gets worse for everybody else who was seeking help prior to this war. Okay, I hope Gulwali's come back. Okay.
Sorry, I've lost you.
Sorry, I think we lost you. So I just so because there was a pandemic, so that already had an escalating impact on Afghanistan. And I realized every time when there's a war somewhere else, it already has an escalating impact on other refugees or people seeking help. So which means that, even we are, trying to support Ukrainian refugees. So you have to prioritize at times that who needs the help the most. So do you think now the people in Afghanistan feel abandoned or forgotten? And, what can we do? What are the best actions for the international community or the humanitarians or the good public out there to support them? We're asking for them to donate, and we understand that long term there has to be a solution in terms of sustainability and protecting their dignity, but going we just want to hear from you that what do you think are the best course of actions to support people in Afghanistan?
Exactly. I mean, it's very frustrating because the attention has gone away. And of course, Afghans in Afghanistan has been abandoned and betrayed, not just in the last 6 months or a year, but in many, many years. But right now, the course of action should be, of course, we should donate and raise the necessary fund. It's not, a few thousand quids, it helps, but it's like a drop in the ocean. We need billions to sustain this. And sadly, I don't have much trust in these big UN charities as well. You can't run a country, as I say, with charities. You have to find a better way of maintaining and running the country and providing support and helping people. So definitely, fundraising, giving donations is important, but also we need to pressure our representatives. We should all be writing to our MPs saying, we need to do more, we need to help. The government, people could give, let's say, 100,000 or 200,000 or a million. But the government needs to be, giving not millions, but actually billions to help maintain and enable Afghans to live and survive. Because as we were saying, 4,000 children are dying a month. We are watching children are dying because the worlds are unwilling to provide the necessary help and support to save children's lives, to provide nutrition and help in hospitals and medications and healthcare. So yes, pressuring governments, giving donation, perhaps going on demonstration and protests, just basically speaking out for Afghans and being empathetic, as you were saying earlier, and showing solidarity with our fellow Muslims, with our fellow human beings, and doing what we can to trying to raise awareness. The situation it's very, very dire. I have never seen it this worse. Things were bad since growing up in Afghanistan. Afghanistan was always poor. People were struggling with poverty and deprivation and desperation. But right now, the level is completely, it's out of the roof. It's really bad. It's complete. I thought it might be bad for some people. When I went there and what I saw, especially in cities, where literally a lot of people live in cities, and there are 6 million internal displaced Afghans because of war and conflict, but also because of natural disasters. And there are about 4 million returnees from Pakistan and Iran. There are about 10 million people who not only not have enough to eat, but they lack shelter. They lack other facilities of healthcare and education and sanitation and so on. So the whole country is experiencing something completely like out of this world. And again, the UN has been emphasizing this for months now, that this is the worst humanitarian crisis. We need action, we need support. I have been seeing videos of old Afghan men and women and children. When people give them food, people provide them with these food parcels, the happiness, the joy, because they've been, really, I have met people who said we haven't had, let's say meat for 3 months. I met a young man, he said he haven't cooked for 28 days. There has been no food cooked in his house for 28 days, imagine. And he was looking for work, but there was no work. And he said, whatever people send us, we eat. Otherwise, we just have, bread with tea if we can find some bread. So, like the most essential things of life that we take for granted here in the West Afghans don't have them. And so I hope we can open our hearts and give what we can and donate and contribute, raise awareness, write to our MPs, campaign on this issue. And so, yeah, we should do what we can. Otherwise, people will die, and we have a responsibility. We have a moral duty towards Afghans, as well as, of course, there's crisis elsewhere where our attention has been diverted. But the Ukrainian situation is bad. But the reason it's bad is because of Russia is bombing it. But the Afghans are not being bombed at the moment, but they've been allowed to die because of starvation, because of extreme hunger.
And it's following a war. So that's aftermath of the war. People only care when the bombs are being dropped and then the cameras move. But what they don't realize is, even with Ukrainian refugees, it will take them 20 to 40 years, even if they rebuild that country, overcoming that trauma. They lost their jobs, they lost their homes, they lost their families, so that trauma on its own is enough to deprive you for the rest of your life. I don't think, you would know from your personal experience. And that's what we're saying to people, that this is the least we can do right now, which is in our control, that we're saying is £40 for a family for a whole month in Ramadan in Afghanistan, for a family of 5. So if you donate £40, we will actually match fund and we'll make that as an £80. And we've already done some, committed to some support, and we are 100% donation policy. I know Gulwali's mentioned that, I've also seen this so many times that, sometime you need to look into who you are donating to, and that goes with Moonlight Trust and every charity. Make your choices. Look into, because so many times I've seen the money has gone into big corporations and the money hasn't reached the beneficiaries, and half of the donations been actually spent on other things. So that's also, as a donor, it's your responsibility to look into those things. And being a charity worker, even I have seen those things. And that's what we're trying to do today, is saying that if it's £1,000, we'll give them the whole £1,000. £200,000 Moonlight, there will be no admin fees or deductions or anything spent on marketing the appeal that we're doing today. So thank you. There's a question there that I've got people asking questions. Somebody asked a question about that, how does this impact the people of disabilities? I mean, I kind of already imagine, but if you want to tell that, maybe it is somebody who's got a particular interest in terms of what's going on with people with disabilities. If people with feet and hands and who can move around are struggling, so what's happening with them?
Exactly. So unfortunately, everybody's struggling, but people with disabilities, orphans, widows, they have it more tougher because we don't have a welfare state. There is no support available to them. And before this whole situation unfolded, people were quite generous and they were supporting these, disabled people who are struggling to survive. But now these people who are able to give support now need support themselves. So thankfully, in Bolton, we have raised with the local mosque in the Bolton Afghan community, there is about £300,000 to support Afghans in 10 different provinces. And the focus was, of course, we all had relatives and family who needed help, but the decision was made, we will only support disabled people, orphans, and widows in 10 different provinces with the money that we have raised. I mean, it's a small step, but there's literally, Afghanistan have the largest widow population in the world. Per capita, Afghanistan have the largest young widow because of the conflict. Has basically so many men were killed because of the conflict. And Afghanistan have about 5 million people who are addicted to drugs. So drug addicts who needs to somehow survive and provide for their families as well. It's just not just the disabled, but like literally almost every Afghans are struggling. And those who with money have sadly or fortunately or unfortunately left the country. So the people back in the country, even there are guys who have money in the banks, they can't even withdraw their own money. And so it's just really frustrating because there is no physical currency. And I think, I was just thinking about the £40. My mobile bill is £40 a month. And so if you think about it, £40 is not much, but you could provide a whole family for a month with all the basic supplies of rice, flour, beans, tea, sugar. And so it really, please, it's not much. Please give, especially, during Ramadan. And when we go out with our friends, the food we have is usually £40-50 anyway. So maybe not going out and sacrificing one of our dinners with friends and instead giving that money to Moonlight Trust or other charities.
Oh, thank you. And also, in terms of the people who are, like you mentioned, the people who are going to work, like doctors and teachers. So I realized that their salary was kind of stalled for a bit. But so are the people going to work? Are they receiving any salaries, or it's not happening?
So some has received salaries, but most of about 1 million Afghan civil servants, teachers, doctors, security forces, they all lost their salaries. So the Taliban actually been asking the international community to provide salaries to teachers, and they're saying, okay, we will, but you have to allow girls to go to school. It has suddenly become a bargaining chip. It has become a political tool when girls should be going to school, women should be going to work. But yes, so most of the people have not received their salaries, and because there is no money, and they're literally the Taliban have not been able to pay civil servants their salaries. Some doctors and teachers has, but from what I have seen, from what I have heard, and especially on Afghan social media and Afghan news, not everybody has received their salaries. No, and the salary they receive is not backdated. So people may be getting salaries now, but they have been working for free for over 6 or 8 months. I saw an interview of a doctor in one of the most deprived provinces of Afghanistan, in southern Afghanistan. He said, "Look, I'm coming to work. I don't even have money to put fuel in my motorbike. I come and walk every day. I walk back until when I had to feed my own family. Of course, I want to save people's lives, but ultimately, I can't do this forever." And also, a lot of educated Afghans I saw were basically selling, fruits on the street. So they were, like, as I said, doctors, engineers, even former security officials and people who had degrees and qualification. They try to make ends meet by selling whatever they can sell on the street or do physical labor. But the situation is such that there is no job opportunities. The Afghans used to come out on the street to look for work, and some of them used to get some work, for £1 or £2 a day. Now that is not even happening. So the situation and the circumstances of Afghans is completely dire, and the only hope they have is that the world should help them. There is no other hope for them to help them. Especially they had a really harsh winter. They were, as I said, there's been droughts, and also the Ukrainian conflict not only impacted Afghanistan because of the funding and the international world's attention, but also literally 20-30% of the world's wheats come from Russia and Ukraine. That has also
Yes,
impacted.
absolutely.
The UN has been struggling to buy flour and wheats because there has been shortage of these things,
Yeah,
and also
yeah.
shortage of a lot of other essential as well, like oil and sugar, and so they've been rationed in most countries. So yeah, there are a lot of food available in Afghanistan, but just there is no money to buy it.
So why, how do you think the sanctions put on Afghanistan by US have impacted? And obviously, and why do you think they've done this? Because we are aware that people are dying. So isn't there another way to do things? I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, putting sanction doesn't affect the Taliban as such. It affects the ordinary people. And so again, the Afghans have been punished for something it's nothing to do with them. And the US were pretty comfortable in allowing the Taliban to take over and give them the sense of legitimacy. Like in 2020, they have signed a deal with them in Doha, in Qatar. So they have allowed the Taliban, to come literally take over. The Americans were actually in Kabul airport when the Taliban took over the country. So now they're putting sanctions and making life difficult for Afghans is not the way to go. And of course, I see the argument because they don't want to be like recognizing and legitimizing the Taliban, but it's not about the Taliban. It's about the Afghan people. When we had to provide them with the normal human rights that everyone have, they should be able to, to go about their lives, provide for their families. The economic activities need to resume. The countries need to start. Export and imports need to start.
Okay, I think. Okay. Okay. There's Bhakti Khair. I think there's a question. The crisis is heartbreaking. Are girls being allowed at schools in Afghanistan currently? So I will ask that Gulwali. Are there any fundraising for events specifically for continuing education in Afghanistan? So I will answer that question because what we're saying is that we do want to support the education and the employability skills and everything. But right now, currently, whilst we speak, people are literally dying because they've not had food. So, and women are giving birth to children who die literally after 2 or 3 days because they've not the mothers didn't eat enough. So all of us know that when we want to go to school or we want to, go to work, all of us need our lunch and our dinner. So right now, the situation is so bad, these people don't even have a lunch or dinner. So the first appeal we're doing is towards food pack. And what we're saying is it's £40 to fund a family of 5 for a whole month. And Moonlight Trust will actually double that donation. If you donate through Gulwali's appeal with a reference of Afghanistan. And to donate to Moonlight Trust is moonlighttrust.org.uk/donate and donate with the reference of Afghanistan appeal. And then we will match fund that towards the donations. Okay, we know how difficult it must be for you, Gulwali, because everything that you just told me. Wow, even I thought I did research, but I didn't know that it was largest amount of widows actually are residing in Afghanistan, and that's because due to war, they lost family members, so the trauma and everything. And I just want to, I know it's hard to often find hope in these situations. So what we're trying to do is, saying we as humans can get together and support these people and do whatever's within our capacity, raise, campaign, fundraise, donate, or, speak to your local representative and, do everything that you can do within your power. I just want to share a positive story. When I was in refugee camps in Greece, I visited all the families that we were helping them, and lots of them were actually Afghan families. And one of the women, that obviously she was in camp and we were giving food. When I actually went there, she said to me, oh, it's our culture, this, I'm just talking about the beauty and the hospitality and the giving, the big hearts of the people from Afghanistan. She said, you must have something. And then she realized she didn't have anything because she was sitting in a refugee camp. So she went and she put sugar in the water and she made me drink that. So, this is who are these refugees. If they come to our countries, we learn from them, their courage, their resilience, their hospitality. They have skills. We often reduce refugees to these images that are being shared on, these are the people people with skill, talent, and they have more drive to achieve more in life than we do, because the life has thrown them, and also another story that I want to share, that one of our driver was Afghan in Greece, and he was also an Afghan refugee, and I hired his taxi because he said not many people were hiring him because it just passed his driving and they were kind of scared, and his driving was a little bit crazy. But, we at 11 o'clock, there were 4 of us and we were girls, and our Airbnb host didn't actually open the door, and we kept ringing him, and we said to him, okay, you leave us here now, your job is just to drop us off here and you can go home because it's 11 at night. And he said, no, I can't leave you here. So he had a 1-bedroom apartment, and he's moved his wife and his daughter, he dropped them at a friend's house and asked us to sleep there, and in the morning they'd made us breakfast and they'd baked us cake. So people don't often talk about refugees in this way, or share like the positivity and the resilience and the kindness and giving. People who met refugees, now they say, our families didn't treat us. Some of the volunteers in Greece said to me, I didn't leave here because I came for 3 months, I stayed for 2 years because my own family is not this kind to me, how they are kind to us. So this is who we are talking about, so we want you to show generosity and kindness. And I think if we were in this situation, we would want the rest of the world to help us and not abandon us. Imagine how that would be. Put yourself in those shoes. So this is what we're saying, because we're going to wind up soon in about, there might be another question. Hold on. Are the girls allowed to go to school, Gulwali?
Well, some of them, till year grade 6, they're allowed, and from grade 6 to 12, there has been issues and complications, but I hope this will be resolved. There has been pressure on the Taliban to allow girls to go to school. Just ideologically, I don't think this has to do much with Islam, but it's more to do with ideologies and politics. And actually, girls are going to universities, but there has been a lot of restrictions on people's freedom, which is unfortunate. But the point about Afghans are most certainly hospitable people, and they, when I saw people in Kabul and Jalalabad, they said the worst thing is they have never been in this situation where not only they could not only provide for the guests, but they can't even provide for their families. And so people were inviting me to their homes, and I were kindly declining, because to decline an Afghan to invite you for food it's very rude, and you're not supposed to do that. But I was declining everybody's request to go there for food because I know everybody was struggling. And I went to Calais a few years ago, and I was visiting, Afghans and other refugees, and I met a group of Afghans in these small tents. They absolutely had nothing, but they made tea for us, they made chai for us, they somehow found biscuits for us. And it's just like they will go to an extra length and mile to make sure they treat you with whatever they could find and whatever they could give you. So it's it's wonderful. And please, give and donate and contribute. Give show your solidarity and kindness.
It's a month of, yeah, please. There's many ways of showing your solidarity, and a lot of people say, well, what can we do for now, for this time and this hour, because it's Ramadan and we are fasting and we know what it's like, before the fast opens. Most people, these people have been, like Gulwali said, have been fasting for 20 years because they've never had that luxury or the meals that we do in this country. So the least we can do is, share a meal. Like I said, if we were in this situation, refugees will always share a meal. All the volunteers in refugee camps will tell you, if they handed over a banana and a tea, the refugee will actually ask them to sit with them, and have it with them. So if we were in that situation, they would share their, room with us. They would share their food with us, and that's what we're asking everyone to do today. So if you do donate, please reference a Afghanistan appeal, and what we will do is then match fund whatever you donate, and 100% of that will go to families, IDPs. We're now looking at IDPs in Kabul because there's a lot of people have come to Kabul because it's getting so bad everywhere else, and I think Kabul's equally bad now from what Gulwali is telling me. I'm just going to check.
There's over 1 million internal displaced people in Kabul, and the people in Kabul are struggling the most because a lot of Afghans move to Kabul for better opportunities, and now there is no work, there is no employment opportunities, so people are stuck there now. Most Afghans who are in Kabul are paying rent, and they're not even able to pay rent. Their rent used to be, let's say, 3,000 Afghani, like £30, for example. Now the rent has come down to £10, and they're not even able to afford that because they just don't have work. So literally, as I said, the situation is completely, dire and inhumane, and it's cruel. We should not be letting people and children die. 4,000 a month, that's 175, 180 children dying a day because they don't have enough to eat. There's lack of nutrition due to malnutrition, and the world just basically sits here and watch. And I'm just really disappointed and disheartened. But I'm sure individuals and communities, we can do our bit and our part.
We can do a little bit,
Yes.
Okay. Okay. One last question. I'm not gonna. After this, we're not taking any more question, guys. Okay. How? Okay. I know this is kind of a topic that has been going on the news and BBC on social media. So there's a lot being said on this. But I'll ask Gulwali to comment on this. How did you react to racist comparisons made between the crisis in Afghanistan and Ukraine? Well.
Yeah, I mean, of course, as I said, I was disappointed and angry. I'm happy for the Ukrainians. Of course, I was in Vienna recently, in Paris, in Denmark. I saw the welcome center, the resources offered, and the help. I mean, Denmark wants to deport Afghans and Syrians, but they want to accept 100,000 Ukrainians, which is amazing. But like the hypocrisy, like they want to deport an old Afghan grandma. They want to send a young Syrian girl who have learned the language, have integrated, went to school there. It's just like, again, it's beyond me. So the racism and discrimination just shows you it doesn't matter your nationality, who you are. If you're a refugee, you're a refugee, and you ought to be treated with the same equal rights and better treatment and humanity and compassion. So the compassion should not be selective, and that has been my issue. I'm not against the Ukrainians getting support and help because they're running away from war. I know as an Afghan how it feels like to run away from war and to live in a war zone, to grow up in a war zone. I completely sympathize with them and empathize with them, and my solidarity, my support is with the Ukrainians, but that should not be at the expense of Afghans and others. And so definitely, like in the UK, everybody's opening their homes to Ukrainians, which is amazing. But the same appeal we started for Afghans, there were only about 500 Afghans were taken on, and there are still over 10,000. After eight months, they're still waiting in hotels and accommodation which is not fit for purpose. It's inadequate, with like 4 or 5 children living in one room with a family, and isolated hotels, getting terrible food. I've been getting a lot of messages from Afghans saying they've been getting food which is not culturally appropriate, and they're not, especially now in Ramadan. The hotels have not done like basically catering companies like Pakistanis or Afghans or whomever, like from our part of the world, to provide them with food. So they're just basically providing everything boiled and fish and chips and things that you can't have for 8 months. So yes, the comparison between Afghans, everybody could see, and how the government has been really worried about the channel crossing of a few thousand, a few hundred people, and they're now happy to accept unlimited numbers of Ukrainians because they're white, because they're from Europe. And that's just very concerning. And it just always come back to racism. I saw an MP speaking to the Prime Minister in the House of Commons the other day, and the Home Affairs Select Committee, or the Public Accounts Select Committee. And he was saying, look, we want the Ukrainians, we want the Qataris, we want rich refugees and rich migrants. We don't want the people coming on dinghies. There's literally so much racism in the right-wing media and with politicians when it comes to Afghans and Syrians and other people fleeing for safety their countries. And it's their human rights. And we haven't even spoke about the anti-refugee bill that's going through Parliament, which will criminalize people like me and people who are making these journeys across the channel, who want to come for a better future, for a safer future, and to seek asylum, which is their human rights. So there's a lot wrong with Britain when it comes to these social justice issues, and how the Prime Minister and the government has been partying and breaking laws, and there is no consequences. And so unfortunately, I'm saddened
And
for
also
what
the
has
media
happened.
coverage. Oh, also there's a media coverage has added another layer to it because, as you say, some of the TV anchors said that, these were people from civilized countries. And I think that's really hurt. Now I've been, lots of Syrian and Iraqi refugees said to me, they said, well, we were also fleeing, bombs, bombs, maybe some of them are fleeing for the same bombs from
Russian
because
bombs.
some of them Russian bombs, some of them, and so we were going through the same. So it is very disheartening, but, we are saying that it's an opportunity for people in Europe to learn and grow and understand that, this is what happens when someone becomes a refugee, not,
Yes, indeed. I have seen some charities. They're like, oh, people are offering to help in Moldova, in Romania, in Poland, but they're not willing to go and help in Greece or in Cyprus or in Bosnia, in Serbia. It's just the double standards of even people, which is really, again, it's very disheartening. But obviously, there are a lot of more good people, so I don't want to focus on the negatives. Please, help Afghanistan, raise awareness, donate. Give what you can. It makes a difference. It has an impact. It will have an impact.
And we are pleased, and I'm very pleased because we campaign for the refugee cause. And in my view, a Syrian mother who's left her house with a child and lost her husband, and house has been bombed, or a Ukrainian mother who has lost her house, her husband's been killed, or with a child, feels exactly the same. So the love of a mother, or we all feel the same. We are humans. We all feel the same for our families. So this whole comparison and differentiation differentiating is also an insult to the injury or to the cause that we are working on, because we are kind of damaging what we are, campaigning for. Because if you're saying the one refugee's rights are more important than another, well, you might as well, basically not do that, because it's kind of not helping the cause. And that's what we're saying, that, we want to, we want more people to come forward and realize. I did a talk like on International Women's Day, and, most of the people were from, from non-BME backgrounds, if you want to call them. And they did say that, actually you have made us realize, think from a different point of view. And, we have moved overall as to when we hear the word refugee on the TV now, and we realize that, this is how a mother actually flees her home, because it's so close to home. And it's made us realize that, what actually these people go through. Because when somehow the bias is constructed in our mind that war is a thing of Africa or Middle East or Asia, and it's not like, it doesn't happen here, and somehow those people it's their fault that most of the fighting and violence and conflict is happening in Africa. Somehow it's escalated, and now we realize it's happening in Europe. So we're realizing that it can happen to anyone. A amount of programs that are going on TV talking about if this can escalate and impact the rest of the Europe, which is a disaster that everybody's imagining that does not unfold. But it can happen to all of us anywhere, and tomorrow we could be refugees. And not long ago, after World War II, Europeans were refugees themselves. So I just think we would like people to, reflect. If this doesn't change your mind, change, reflect. Don't just learn the media headlines, listen to people like Gulwali, listen to refugees. He's contributed so much to this country. And, this book is now being translated in 7 different languages. And, buy his book. That might move you. That might change you. So that's what we're trying to do today. And please donate towards this appeal, with a reference of Afghanistan. And 100% we will spend it on the families. There are no admin or marketing or any cuts on this donation. So thank you very much. We can't take any more questions because I'm also fasting, and Gulwali also needs to go and, take rest before he opens his fast. But do not forget the people that, who don't have any food. At least we have food on the table to open our fast. So some people are not. And, their biggest, refugees say their biggest wish is to open the fast with their families, because I know so many refugees in the camps. They say, my dad's in Denmark and my mum's in a camp in Iraq and us 3 siblings are here. So, they're also split up. So those of you who are Muslim, it's a privilege to open the fast underneath a roof, and please think of those sisters and brothers who don't have this. And Gulwali, one last thing, what is the hope? If we want to, what is the hope in this whole situation? Yeah. I know it's a very hard question.
Don't take anything for granted. I mean, to people here, and be appreciative. And the hope is basically the things that give me hope is there are people like, for example, yourselves, and there are other individuals, charities, collectively, community groups raising funds. I mean, this is the first time in 15 years I lived in Britain that our local mosques in Bolton have actually come together with the Afghan community. It's the first time that Afghanistan has been, prayed for. There's been dua being made, because before I've never heard in our local mosque dua for Afghanistan or any fundraising for Afghanistan. So things are changing. To see, in a month or so, they have raised over £300,000 to support Afghans. That's amazing. So that gives me hope. And I think, people's generosity, people's sense of responsibility and duty to help our fellow human beings who are suffering. So that's definitely, even though the world is such a miserable place, there's a lot of inequalities, but seeing the actions of people fundraising all across the UK and Europe, Afghans actually fundraising, sending money to their families. I mean, I raised £17,000 within like 2 months or so. That's amazing. So people have been very kind.
Amazing.
And also with the book, I mean, there's a link in my Instagram. So if people buy a book, so if they get one book, hopefully I'll be able to, depending on how much they pay, I'll be able to support and donate the rest of the money to the cause in Afghanistan, to the humanitarian work. So by reading my story in my book, you're also helping, feeding families. So I've started this campaign, a crowdfunding campaign as well. So yeah, thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for your efforts, and thanks to everyone.
You.
And so yeah, wish you well and have a good Ramadan, and keep up the good work, and thanks for your dedication.
And thank you. We are honored, and all the work that you do, all the campaigning is instrumental. And we want to say to people that, keep connected and keep learning. And, this is an opportunity for you to learn and grow, help, donate, raise, campaign, do whatever's within your capacity, because all of us can do something, all of us. And I'm one example, Gulwali is another. We started just, as volunteers out of goodwill, because we just thought we could maybe somehow educate somebody or change somebody. And today in Moonlight Trust, we've helped 72,000 people. So, and that would have not been possible without your help. So thank you so much. And, we want to leave on a positive note, even though it's very, very harsh what we're going through right now. So thank you, Gulwali. Thank you for your time. And thank you for everyone who's joined. And whoever's question I haven't answered, please forgive me. Maybe you send me the question, I'll send it to Gulwali and he can respond to you. Okay, then. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Nushi. Yeah, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.